Good day, fellow champions of inclusion. I am AA Ron, and this is the Inclusive Dad podcast, where we explore inclusion and make it practical. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join me in exploring ways we can create a more inclusive world together. You are important, you matter, and you can make a difference. Today, my guest is Seth Besse. Did I even pronounce that close to right?
Bessie, but you can call me
Besse,
whatever,
okay.
whatever's convenient.
It's one of those moments when I'm like start into my intro, and I'm like, crap, I forgot to ask someone how to pronounce his last name, but it's all good. Well, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Why don't you just start us off by telling me a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. So Seth Besse, the CEO of Undivided, myself, kind of my corporate professional career is tech and operations. The majority of that has been spent in legal tech. And kind of the common thread throughout my career has been finding kind of areas of information asymmetry and building transparency and doing that through data and technology systems to get out to the world.
Awesome. Do you want to talk a little bit about like your background and with ADHD and dyslexia, or
Yeah.
talk me through?
So I'm dyslexic myself. I have ADHD. I didn't know much about that as a kid growing up, and I wish my parents knew when I was younger more, what would help me through school. And I still have nightmares now thinking about going around the room and having to read a paragraph out loud and
Oh,
all that. And
hmm,
so, those times and those things, I really hope that we can come up with kind of getting ways to get the information out to parents more so that kids can get more of the supports that they need to kind of thrive.
yeah. So when were you diagnosed with ADHD and dyslexia?
So I was diagnosed, I believe, when I was 11.
Okay.
Um, and then, not much was done past then.
Okay.
But that was obviously a different time than
Right.
today. And
Right.
now I'm going through the same process with my son,
Right.
who seems to learn in very similar ways to myself.
Sure.
So it's been interesting kind of revisiting that process as a parent now.
Yeah, I'm sure. What is your definition of inclusion?
Well, so the whole concept for me is to make kind of a more diverse world, and we need to include kids, include individuals, and include parents in everything. And kind of the key thing, and obviously we'll get into Undivided a bit more in a second, but the key thing for me is that we can't just focus on individuals that need inclusion, but those that work with them, support them, and are caregivers for them. And really,
Right.
that's our focus, and kind of personally, my focus is how do we kind of get the first step of inclusion out there, which is knowledge and understanding.
Right. Awesome. Yeah. Do you want to maybe talk a little bit about Undivided, like how you or how that started, how you made the jump from what you had been working on to this platform?
Yeah, absolutely. So Undivided was originally started by two co-founders, Jason Lembeck and John Zimmerman, and both of them had done a few successful startups in the past, kind of in the ad tech space. Jason himself, who's obviously a very good friend, has a son, Noah, with a rare genetic condition that
Okay.
manifests as CP. And he was just kind of shocked through the whole process, right? And the fact that the first bit of advice he got from a number of providers was go out and get a physical 3-ring binder, to store all the documents and all the documentation, right?
Yep.
So he and John got together and started building this concept of a digital binder to really help and
Okay.
support families. I started working with both John and Jason on the side while I was working on a corporate legal management product with a venture fund. Um, and pretty quickly, I kind of looked at the problem in a different way, a little bit kind of fresh eyes concept. And what I looked at was, okay, we have an issue here where we have parents that aren't told or don't have the means to understand all of the services, systems, and support that's available to their kids, right?
Hmm.
obviously that works its way into inclusion as well. If you don't know what's available, it's hard to push inclusion. And so I started looking at that. I started working with them kind of nights and weekends for fun. And I started out by having a whole bunch of conversations with parents. And the big kind of key thing that I started to learn was that as you ask parents, what's been the most impactful thing that you've learned for your child, once you have 15 or 20 conversations, you start hearing repeats, right? There's some major kind of key supports, key pieces of understanding that parents need to have to really support their children. And then when you start figuring out where parents learned that, there was no one source, right? They all learned it from another parent when they were in a waiting room. They learned it from this one provider that had another client that was doing something, right? Everyone learned it, and kind of the one common way was luck, right? And the challenge there is, okay, we have a relatively small set of things, or it's not small, but it's a manageable set. It's something that technology and data can communicate, and we need to figure out a way to efficiently and effectively communicate that out to parents. In a way when they're ready to consume it, right? And part of the challenge we have is that, caregivers of children with disabilities are by definition busy, right? And so they have a lot going on. They have work responsibilities, they have home responsibilities, and they have caregiving responsibilities. And so to pull that all together and manage that knowledge in one person's head is impossible, right? Yet the systems that were out there were very much, okay, let's run a training. That parent has to take copious notes at the time. They don't have time to do that thing that they were taking a training on for 6 months, a year, at which point either the process has changed to do that or they forgot it entirely, right? And so how do we build this framework to help parents understand that, right? So I started kind of working with that approach. And John and Jason convinced me to come on full time. And it probably wasn't as hard as they thought, in that my day job at that point was going out and talking to lawyers all day about how they manage their corporate legal practice. And then you flip that and look at talking to parents all day about caregiving and their needs. That was a lot more fun. And I looked at this and said, okay, this is a data problem and a software problem that in some ways I've solved similar things in my professional career in the past. And this is actually worth doing. Right. So I jumped in full time, and we kind of turned this concept of Undivided into a full-fledged platform that helps us understand what parents qualify for, what is of interest, what's relevant to them. And then we walk them through how to do it, right? And so the whole concept of Undivided is how I kind of like to describe it, is we make sure that every parent of a child with disabilities can answer 3 key questions, which is, what should I do for my child? How do I do it? And who can help me when I get stuck? Very simple, very high level, but something that no one has really solved at scale to date, right? And the first challenge of what should I do for my child, there's a whole bunch of misinformation out there. Typically not malicious misinformation, but misinformation just from a lack of understanding of the supports, the programs, the waivers, the exceptions, all of the minutia that surrounds all this stuff. And so our system builds out a roadmap. Parents interact with our system, answer a number of questions. We kind of put them through this motivational interviewing process to understand what they may either qualify for, or may want to look into, or may want to further understand. We put all of that information on a roadmap, right? So they know, okay, my child's 5 now. I'm going to need to look at this, and I should revisit this when they're 8, right? And then here I'm going to get ready for transition to high school, right? And here are the things that I'm going to want to look at. So we build that roadmap so parents can know what they need to think about now and what they're going to need to do in the future. And then everything on that roadmap, we call a goal. And inside those goals, we give parents step-by-step guidance of how to execute on it. And that's kind of a critical part of our system, in that as parents go through that step-by-step guidance, they hit roadblocks, right? And they tell us, right? And so every time a parent hits a roadblock, we update the content, we update the information so that that roadblock's cleared out.
Right.
And so our system and our content is constantly updating and understanding and with what parents are seeing on the ground, right? And so whether that's a specific school district that's going through some changes, or it's a regional center in California that's requiring some new documentation, right? All of that information is updated for parents, so they go in fully knowing. And part of the concept of really pushing that education is we have so many systems where there's a social worker assigned to help someone, or a service coordinator at a regional center in California, or what have you. And those individuals typically don't have as much training as they need on individual specific cases, right? And so what our goal is to empower the parent to know that system through and through, so they can, in a way, educate the person that's supposed to be helping them along. And that just streamlines that process, and obviously shortcuts the time from when a parent understands about a program or a service or a support to when they actually access it. And then the third piece of who can help me when I get stuck, this is where we have a whole set of systems where we have a team internally that supports parents. One of those ways is through our navigators, and our navigators are all parents themselves of children with disabilities. So they've kind of been through this process for the benefit of their own kids, and then they've helped hundreds of other kids or hundreds of other families through the process as well. And so they're there to kind of be that partner for a family, to help them understand, help them prioritize, help them work through each of the challenges. And the key thing for us is, because those navigators are working hand in hand with parents, we get very detailed information on what's working, what's not working, what hiccups are there, what content parents aren't understanding, so we can turn around and fix that. And our navigators, the first thing we put them through in training is, it is okay and it is encouraged to say, I don't know the answer to that, let me get back to you. And they have access to our team of advocates, our experts, the rest of our navigator team, to make sure that we're getting parents the most up-to-date, most informative and effective information.
Yeah. Wow. My brain just came up with like 1,000 questions, so I'm trying to figure out which one to ask. So, I mean, in Minnesota, we have something, every state has it, but it's called like I might have the name wrong, like the Federally Funded Parent Assistance Centers, something like that.
Yep. Yeah, a lot of states have family resource centers or family empowerment centers. Yeah, similar systems.
But in Minnesota, it's called like PACER Center. So that, I went there as a parent multiple times to different like presentations, classes, and then they have, they don't call them navigators, but something like that, where parents can call and get assistance. But to me, when I was listening to you, it's almost like you've taken that whole process and made it way more streamlined, because from my experience with that is that they don't have like the tech behind it, so it's just not this, doesn't sound this like seamless and robust. So it seems like you almost made that process better, is what it sounds like.
Yeah, and those systems and family resource centers, family empowerment centers, they do an amazing job.
Yeah.
But they don't have the technology, and they don't have the longevity of the relationship, right? So the challenge is, parents in this space tell their story and tell their child's story a million times a day, right? And so to bring someone up to speed from zero again and again and again is not only exhausting, but it's a waste of time, right? There's only so much information that someone needs on the other side, and parents don't know that. So they start from scratch again, right? And there's so many times that we hear that, a parent will spend an hour laying everything out and basically get the answer of, oh, well, we're out of time, and have to do that process again. The other challenge that I was talking about is parents go through these trainings, and these trainings are typically really well curated. The problem is then a parent needs to take the notes and take the active notes to it, right? So our whole goal is, great, go to those trainings and then use our system, our content, and our platform to have those notes, right? So we can be there to jog your memory 6 months down the road, a year down the road, when you actually, it's time to do it.
Yeah, for sure. I remember going through a training. It was at the local school in the district where my kids went, and somebody from the state put it on, and they had like a pile of papers like this they handed out and for us there, and they're like, I remember them clearly saying that if everybody knew about all the programs that were available, like the government wouldn't have enough money to like fund it. There's so many people that qualify for all this stuff. We don't talk about enough for people to know what's even out there. So there is a huge gap, like you're saying, of what's available and what families can access. That just like you're saying, you just come across it by luck or some weird, you're in a waiting room, somebody mentions, you see they have like a different scary, like, where'd you get that? And all of a sudden, there's this other program you've never heard about that you can use to fund stuff. You are absolutely correct. It's just, there's so much stuff. It's just parents, we have no way to find it.
It's a huge issue, and we have parents that come to us all the time with, hey, I need help getting network insufficiency because I'm paying this out of pocket that's costing us an extra $500, right?
Yep.
And we look at that and we say, great, we'll help you with that, but there's all these programs over here that could save you a lot more money than that, right? And we can do that. We can do it quickly, and you can apply that money to that $500, right? So there's all these ways of, looking at the system and all the areas of support holistically, right? And we kind of, in this space, what ends up happening is a segmentation and a siloing of support and knowledge, right? So you have the school system that's providing some supports. You have kind of a regional center public benefit system that's providing some supports. And you have health insurance over here that's providing other supports, right? None of them talk to each other. None of them know how to access support through the other thing, right? So there's no one that, it's kind of their job to say, no, we're not the right place for that, but not, no, we're not the right place for that, but, insurance is, and here's how you request it, right? And so that really is our role, to bring that whole thing together. You said something really important a second ago where, there's so many programs, and if everyone knew about them, the government couldn't afford it, right? I think the really important thing, and I hear things like that all the time, and yes, it may be true, but the fact of the matter is all of these programs are in place for a reason. Right. And typically that reason, like it or not, is often economic, right? Where there has been a decision or analysis made that if we provide these supports now early in a child's life, it will cost us less in the future, right? And so the challenge of having dollars like this go unused is when dollars go unused, it's really hard to say this program is critical, right? Because it's very easy to attack it and say, oh, well, if it was critical, why aren't the funds used every year? Right. And it also becomes hard to prove that it is having an impact, right? Because your ecosystem of parents that's utilizing that is smaller, right? And so all of those things come to, there is kind of a duty to use these services, use these systems. And there's a little bit of, stigma and everything that goes around with using some of these systems. They wouldn't be available if they weren't supposed to be. Right. And so it's really kind of everyone's job in this space to, if that support would be helpful to you and beneficial to your child, let's use it, right? Because it's there for a reason.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks for the clarification. Yeah, I mean, that is true. Like what you're saying, if people aren't using it and they're looking at dollars and stuff in a budget, and like, why we have this program, nobody's using it, what's the point of having it? But some of that stuff is very critical, and my daughter is on a waiver, Medicaid waiver. So I mean, that's what kept her at home. I mean, her whole life, 22 years, that's what kept her at home, and it's way cheaper to keep her at home with us taking care of her than it is to go anywhere else. But with all the stuff in the news and what's going on right now, it's that stuff. Who knows if that's in play? But it's just like, I mean, it doesn't make sense to me. But I mean, also stuff we need to talk about. Like I have been talking about, you hear the word Medicaid on the news, this is what it means to me and my family. Like,
Yeah.
it's not somebody, it's not an illegal, immigrant taking advantage of healthcare system. This is what's keeping her at home, and that's what she's been able to participate in community in her life, her whole life, because of that Medicaid thing. So you got to, I've been trying to put, faith with what that means in our situation for sure.
Yeah, no, and it's kind of a story that needs to be told
Yeah,
more and more and more, right? And
yeah,
because there is an easy way to message that these
right.
systems are being abused as
Yeah,
opposed to used properly,
yeah,
and that they're required, right?
yeah,
And so it's kind of, as a community, it's our job to really make
right.
sure that that message gets out there.
Absolutely. Could you maybe walk us through a real world example of a family whose life was transformed by using Undivided?
Yeah, so we have, on average, the families that work with us, we uncover and unlock $63,000 a year
Wow.
of benefits and value for them, right? And so for a lot of families, that comes in the form of programs like IHSS in California, right? And so
Mhm.
IHSS, in-home support services, very much like what you mentioned with your daughter there, where it is a way for parents to have dollars to either pay a caregiver
Mhm.
or be a caregiver for their
Yep.
child,
Sure.
right? And that is a program that there are so many examples
Mhm.
where parents are told that there is an income limit on it, or that they don't qualify for, Medicaid in California, Medi-Cal, and therefore they can't qualify for that. There is
Sure.
a waiver, right? And so all of these things, there's so many layers to the onion that get peeled back. But that's a way for families that is absolutely huge,
Yep.
right? And massive. Other things that we do for families all the time is network insufficiency, right? And so in this space, when you have a whole bunch of kind of boutique um, OT, speech therapies, and and
Mhm.
and so on and so forth, and there's so much demand, a lot of those boutique providers that really have the specialties end up being out of network, right? And
Mhm.
so what ends up happening is parents often go without um, key services for their children
Mhm.
because there is no in-network option,
Yep.
right? And obviously, the insurance company does not do a fantastic job of educating parents that if their network is insufficient, you can get out-of-network providers covered as in-network, right? So
Mhm.
we do a whole bunch of stuff around that.
Okay.
We do a whole bunch of stuff around IEPs and helping
Mhm.
parents understand that process, right? So
Sure.
many families that come to us, um, they understand that they can push back on goals in their IEP. They understand that they can request additional, present levels of performance plots. They understand that they can request accommodations, but they
Mhm.
don't fully understand the value and the importance of having goals written correctly, right?
Mhm.
And how that makes it easier to have a really good
Right.
working relationship with the school,
Right.
how the balance and understanding um, pull out and push in services, right?
Yep.
All of those systems, the little nuances that don't take long to explain to a parent, end up being an absolutely critical a critical piece for supporting kids.
Yeah. That's great. What are you might have talked about this a little bit, but what are the biggest bureaucratic hurdles parents face when trying to secure IEP accommodations, Medicaid waivers, or other services, and how does your platform cut through them?
Yeah. So for a lot of what we see, at least in California, is around regional center services. And so the regional center is the payer of last resort for parents. There is a program called the Early Start Program that is ages 0 to 3.
Okay.
At 3, there's a transition into the program, and basically it's 3 on if they qualify under what's called the Lanterman Act.
Mhm.
There is a whole bunch of kind of bureaucratic process that is involved in adding services that you get from the regional center.
Okay.
And the challenges that we see is oftentimes regional centers will give the answer of no, we can't cover that,
Hmm.
but they don't give the answer of who should,
Yeah.
right? And because they're the payer of last resort, there's a very important process of proving, there is a letter of denial from the insurance company,
Right.
right? Or the school can't provide this service, right? And so all of that documentation is something that our system and our navigators walks parents through collecting and gathering so
Hmm.
that that process with the regional center happens more smoothly, right?
Okay.
So instead of a parent going in and saying, hey, I need X, regional center saying no, and the back and forth, you know, starts happening then, and it's 6 months before that parent can access those service for their kids. If they go in knowing, okay, this is something that typically insurance would cover, here's my letter of denial,
Hmm.
right? They can go in and they can get that service
Right.
in weeks, not months. Right. And all of that just makes a huge difference in cutting down on that back and forth. It saves the parent time, it saves the regional center time and money. And all of that can go into, delivering more services for families. Right. So
Yeah.
that's kind of one area. And then we have a whole bunch of systems that we're releasing very soon around IEPs. And
Mhm.
this is where some of the advancements in AI are
Mhm.
incredible for what we're doing here, which is our system takes in IEPs, extracts all the data out of those IEPs. And the beauty of kind of how it does it is IEPs are relatively complex documents with a whole
Mhm.
bunch of check boxes, check any that apply, things
Yep.
like that, that historically has been really hard to pull and extract out of documents on an automated basis, right? And
Mhm.
so our system does that, and then it walks parents through the process of creating concerns on specific goals or services or accommodations, right? And so our system suggests, hey, this goal is documented in such a way that it would be hard at the end of the year to prove and get resolution, so on and so
Yep.
forth. Here is a recommendation of how this goal could be rewritten
Mhm.
to, increase the likelihood of success, right? And so it helps parents go through that process so that parents can take their draft IEP, run through it in a matter of minutes, and go
Mhm.
to that second meeting or walk into their IEP
Yep.
meeting with a full list of, okay, goal one, good to go. Goal two, I'd like to
Yep.
rewrite it. Goal three, this service, we need more time. Here's a letter that we got from our private OT, so on and so forth.
Right.
Right. So it simplifies that entire process that every parent, it takes days and days, if not
Yeah.
weeks, to prepare for that IEP. And
Yep.
so many parents go into their IEP, and we hear afterwards that, yeah, I meant to talk about that and I totally
Mhm.
forgot about it, because obviously the meeting drags on. The
Yep.
school has their kind of focus and their agenda, and it's hard sometimes for parents to insert themselves into that agenda and really kind of keep the process going,
Right.
especially on something that's so emotional and exhausting.
Yep. No, I mean, that sounds amazing because, I mean, my daughter, she qualified under severely multiply impaired, so it was not uncommon to have 10 school staff across the table from us. So our IPs were sometimes 50 pages long, and early on, when I didn't know better, we'd show up to a meeting and they'd put the 50-page draft in front of me, and I was like, I can't. I mean, I can't. It's going to take me a couple hours to read this, then I got to process it and come up with stuff. So having a tool like that where you could put it in there and, go over it for you and maybe key off some things would be a lot. I mean, for our situation, would have been amazing. It's
Yeah.
just you can't,
Well,
and it's all worded in a way that you're not normally used to hearing words and stuff. So it's just so much stuff to
yeah.
read.
Well, when you think about it that way as well, right? With a 50-page IEP, there is no way
No,
that your daughter's teachers are reading that,
that's
right?
also true.
And so, the other part of it that's critical is, okay, here is this teacher, here are the parts that are relevant to this
Right.
teacher.
Yep.
I don't care if that teacher goes through all 50
Right.
pages, right?
Right. Yep.
49 pages of that are totally irrelevant to them. but I
Yep.
really need them to understand
Yeah.
this goal and these three accommodations,
Yeah.
right?
For sure.
And just to kind of streamline that whole process, it just builds a better relationship
Yep.
with you, the parent, the student, and the school.
Yeah. So have you did you try like run an IEP through the system and then somebody brought this up to an IEP meeting and how did that go, or have you not at that
Yeah,
level
so
yet?
we've had staff using it
Okay.
internally, as
Sure.
kind of we test and verify, and then the hope is that we're releasing it out to the
Okay.
broad public here in a few weeks.
That sounds amazing. Yeah. No, that sounds great because I mean I've also thought of, since I talk a lot about inclusion, like somehow using AI to put an IEP in there and like come up with some kind of a rating scale, like this IEP is 5 out of 10, or like figure out, key things in an IEP where you could key off to like show like how inclusive it is. And I thought that'd be interesting too, just to
Well,
kind of
and
figure out the thing. Go ahead.
there's so many ways to review your IEP, right?
Right.
There's kind of this stuff you have to fix, right?
Right.
And
Yep.
then there's some stuff, okay, as a parent, I really want to focus on inclusion, right? So I
Yep.
want to look at this with an inclusion lens first,
Right.
right? And so that concept really helps you prioritize. And
Right.
part of it, there's so many times where a parent is not going to think about this stuff necessarily on their own. And so what ends up happening, right, is you as a parent, if you started over with your daughter today,
Yep.
you would have better IEPs from day one,
Oh,
right?
for
Because
sure.
you've learned a ton through this
Yes.
process,
Yep.
right? That and part of the problem we have here is that hindsight's 2020,
Yep.
and as parents get through the process, they realize that, oh man, this would have been, and it's kind of
Yep.
this regret of all of this stuff I should have done years ago
Yep.
because you were asked as a parent to figure it all out on your own,
Yep.
right? Instead of being able to take the knowledge that's in your head now
Hmm.
and have a parent of a 6-year-old download that and understand it into
Yeah.
their head and build from there, right? and
Yeah.
and that's kind of what our system and our platform allows
Yeah.
parents to do, is say, okay, what are all the best practices that every parent
Right.
who's stumbled their way through it
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
discovered these things through pain and hindsight, can a new parent benefit from?
Awesome. So does this only have California stuff in it, or is there other states that are in there,
Yeah, so
or how?
So right now we've been focused largely in California,
Yep.
and we're kind of taking the state by state approach, frankly, because of public benefits.
Mhm.
And so we're just rolling out, and we're working with a number of families in Washington State now as well. And the plan is to roll out in New York and Massachusetts, and then kind of go state by state by state.
Mhm.
And obviously, things with IEPs are broadly relevant
Right.
across all
Yep.
states with little tweaks here and there. And so there's a number of areas like that
Mhm.
we already have thousands and thousands of families using our content, utilizing our
Right.
content, predominantly IEP content from across the country.
Okay. Awesome. I did look at the website briefly, and it seems like there might be, like, if I remember correctly, like 3 different tiers that families can access. So do you want to maybe briefly like go through like,
Yeah.
'cause, I mean, as a family, as a caregiver, everything costs money, so it looked like it was pretty low cost
Yeah.
monthly. Can you maybe explain it a little bit?
Yeah, certainly. So first off, we have kind of a free tier that's open to parents who want to browse and use our content, right? And
Mhm.
we see about a million unique users a year using our content and our resources, and all of that for us is free out to the world because it's so important to get that
Right.
knowledge out there.
Yep.
Right. That first step is, what is out there? How do I understand this? All of that. And all of our content is written from the standpoint of, how do we explain this to a parent? Right. And so that's kind of a key attribute there. So parents can come in, they can set up a free account, and they can browse as much of the resources as they want. A key feature there is parents bookmarking. So we
Right.
see thousands and thousands of parents going through bookmarking, information specific to IEPs and what have you. So it's easy for them to get back to.
Right.
And then we have what's called our platform offering. And this is just $9 a month, gives parents access to the full platform, and the road mapping system, the goals with the step-by-step guidance of how to get through them. And importantly, it also gives parents access to our office hours. So every week we bring in an IEP advocate, a public benefits advocate, an insurance advocate, and parents have time to ask their own questions. Importantly, we do it as kind of an open office hours. So we get a whole bunch of members coming in and just listening, right? Because it's that same dynamic of sitting in the waiting room and hearing about that program or hearing that question of another parent, where parents end up kind of, in effect, being able to look around that corner of what might be coming. And so that's just $9 a month. And then we have what we call Platform Plus. And so that's access to the platform, everything else that the platform includes. But parents can message back and forth with our navigator team. And so that gives them kind of that customized ability to say, hey, this is what I'm specifically dealing with. They can message 24 hours a day. They can message at 2 a.m. when they're worried about something, right? All of that happens through the app, and our navigator team will get back to them. And that system kind of goes through any navigator on our team will pick up that specific issue, work through with a parent. And then if they message a week later, it's likely going to be a different member of the navigator team going through it. And that's $49 a month. And then we have our navigator level offering, and that's $115 a month. And in that offering, you get partnered with your specific navigator. And so navigators get to know parents. They work through the entirety of that relationship together. And the beauty of that is the navigator really gets to know the parent, the child, how they want to work, right? And go through that process. And so they truly become that partner and that second set of eyes and ears to look at this information, to think about these things. And in the navigator offering, parents can message back and forth as much as they want with their navigator. And then they also have what we call a boost call once a month, which is a 45-minute video call where, parents use that for anything under the sun, right? Some parents go through it and they prioritize their roadmap and make sure everything's in order. Some parents, use it as a time to talk to another parent that's had a kid being bullied in school. Others use it as, a study hall, right? Where we're going to take this, this Medicaid renewal that we need to go through, and we're going to fill it out together, on video. Great, right? And so it ends up being kind of that system for parents. We've felt very strongly that we've wanted to keep this system kind of private pay and what's often referred to as direct consumer. The reason for that is I very much wanted to make sure that incentives are fully aligned, right? And anytime you have kind of a customer, the person paying that's different than your user, you end up with slightly misaligned incentives, right? And so for myself specifically and us, I really wanted to make sure that we were building an offering that parents were getting value out of every single month. We've done that, we've proven that. And so now we're working through other ways that parents can pay. And so, for example, in California, we're working with a regional center system now to allow parents to pay through that system. We're working with a few different insurance companies on pilots to potentially roll this out to their membership. And really all of that, now that we've kind of established the system, the platform, the offering, we're moving towards expanding it to additional payment pathways for parents.
Yeah, I'm also, thank you for that. I'm also looking at your website. Is it like there's a part for like employers? Is it the thought maybe to have like the employee assistance programs where an employer would purchase a subscription and their employees would have access to this also?
Yeah, exactly. So we have a few partnerships in that space where we're working on selling into them as well. We have a few discussions going with large employers, and it makes all the sense in the world from an employer, right? The stats the stats are crazy, right?
Yeah.
30+% of parents with disabilities leave the workforce, right? And so that concept alone, and they leave the workforce because they need to spend a ton of time figuring all this stuff out, right? And so, and that's not even talking about the stress, the anxiety, the overwhelm that goes into those caregivers that makes them less and less productive employees, right? And so our system, our platform provides for that in a huge way.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. What is one tip you can share to help the listeners be more inclusive today? So just one thing everybody can start doing today to be more inclusive.
Spread knowledge. So I think if there's one trick, one thing you've learned, make sure to tell as many parents as you possibly can, because all of that pushes through the community like wildfire, right? There's so many examples where people learn from parents, not just because that's who has the information, but because there's that shared camaraderie, that understanding. And so as we educate parents and as we educate caregivers, that is the biggest thing that is going to push inclusion through the community.
Yeah, I love that. Where is the best place for everybody to connect with you?
Yeah, so check us out on undivided.io. We're obviously on Facebook, Instagram, all of the things. So find us, follow us, and we'd love to help everyone in California. And as we expand state by state by state, we form kind of wait lists and newsletter lists so that when we're available in those states, especially starting pilots in those states, we can bring those people in. And for example, as we start new pilots in new states, we typically do that process for free. So we'll have families work with navigators for free for a period of time while we kind of build up that critical mass of knowledge and information.
That's awesome. Ready for the last question?
Yeah.
You like spam lunch meat? Yes or no?
I'm okay with spam. So I lived in Maui for a couple of years, and so yeah, spam is definitely an important part of the diet there.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. I've never been to Hawaii, but I hear it's a big thing there.
Yeah, the spam sushi rolls is a big thing.
Yep. Yeah, I live near Austin, Minnesota, where they make spam and where the spam museum is located. So if you ever come back to Minnesota and want to visit the spam museum, you got to come down to Austin, Minnesota.
I will definitely do that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Great conversation.
To those listening, thank you for allowing me to be part of your journey. It is truly an honor. Please join the podcast newsletter by clicking on the link in the episode description to keep up with the latest episodes. Together, we can make the world more inclusive. Until next time, stay empowered and be a champion for inclusion.